Good evening, Internet. My
Hello,
name,
internet and movie lovers everywhere.
and to all a good night. This is Andrew,
Matthew too, who's a movie lover himself.
back from behind the curve, and Matthew, the person who most often drags me to the movies. So, here we are. We are here to discuss a very interesting film tonight. This is one of Matthew's favorites. We just got a chance to view it over our fall break, and we have some thoughts on the movie Brazil.
Okay, well, I have a lot of opinions on this one because it's my favorite. I guess I ought to give the rundown. As you know, Andrew, I am.
Why don't we establish what it is first? So at least because I'm assuming not a lot of people have seen this. So I'm thinking
Okay.
if we kind of
Yeah.
break it down, if we kind of break down what it is for them, then they can kind of
Yeah.
understand what we're getting on about.
Well, yeah. I kind of introduced it in a previous episode as a film by Terry Gilliam, the guy who did Monty Python and the Holy Grail. He did this 10 years later. It's kind of like a comedic version of 1984, only not really that, as Andrews probably knows. As you know, Andrew knows me as a guy who knows all these obscure 80s movies,
Because he does.
movies in general. So this is a obscure 80s movie that he can go brag about, both online and offline. I think that's pretty sufficient. Like that's
Yeah, it's a retro futuristic horror comedy.
Yeah, and I have a lot of opinions on this because it's my favorite movie, and I have 2 pages of notes. So I want to hear what you had to say first.
Okay, so I am far less opinionated about this movie than Matt is. Mainly because this is the first time I've ever seen it. I didn't really have any cultural context for what it is.
And you know
Uh,
what the '80s are, and you was like, oh, isn't it interesting? They pulled this all off in 1984 with $15 million.
yeah. The effects with the budget narrow it was in were very impressive. I thought that was one of the things that made it most interesting was the level of set design. The actual like set building was quite impressive. It was very immersive. It was quite cohesive. I thought
Oh yeah.
they did a really good job building a cohesive world. The storyline is it's easy to follow, but it is all over the place.
Did you understand the plot, or like just the basic skeleton of it?
Well,
And
yeah, it's like the you understand the plot, but I think at the end there is at least I was saying, oh, so that's kind of it. It's like there was a plot, but it didn't seem to be of any significance.
yes and no. It's kind of it explore its thing is like like I said, I love fiction that explores philosophy and psychology, and it I think the plot needs more than one viewing to be fully understood. But at the same time, I think it can be understood first viewing in the most in the most rudimentary way. Another movie I like that's kind of like it's called Primer, which is like it's very complicated, but it can basically be understood. But like the surface stuff you understand.
Yeah,
Sounds
no,
like.
the surface stuff I understand. I can see the parts where it does start to toy around deeper. I'm thinking though. I'm thinking especially where Jonathan Pryce and is dealing with Bob Hoskins the couple times that he comes in. I'm thinking like those ones, like you do see what the movie's trying to get at,
Yeah.
but as as a person, it can be pretty ambiguous,
Yeah.
which I mean isn't always a virtue, but at least I thought the acting was good.
Yeah, I mean, like, I didn't want to say like I like because it's inherently complicated, but I just think
It is very complicated.
I like it. I like how it had all these elements and explored the philosophy it was going for very well and in different aspects. I'm not trying to take this over from you, but like every element was not well, maybe every element, but like all the elements that were in it kind of like were used to explore this, and like certain elements are like when you look back, like yeah, that's like explains this very well, like using this. I know that's less your thing, but like, what was your favorite aspect of the film? Because there's a lot going on. Like I said, it's like it's an entirely prefabricated world. Like it's
Yeah.
a very auteur. It has like Terry Gilliam is like the author of this film. He like made he did the art design. He did the concept
Yeah.
art for this.
I would say that the art design,
Yeah.
probably the absurdity, like the way in which it makes the audience
Oh yeah.
accept absurdity it stays very true to its internal logic. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, and the atmosphere of it is just so binding.
Oh yeah.
I think the I would I don't even know, but I would argue that the atmosphere of the movie is maybe even I think it might even move it along more than the actual characters.
Yeah, that's
Is
kind
the
of its strong suit to the point that other things are a little bit ignored. Maybe,
Yeah,
or at least on the surface. I
the
haven't watched.
character
This is my second time
yeah.
watching it.
Yeah, that is my biggest critique about it is that the characters are a little limp.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
like Sam Lowry's catchphrase is like, "I don't know what I want." Like in college writing workshops, like despite the fact that Brazil looking so a masterpiece like that, if you would write down what Sam is in the, even though he does have like a purpose in the plot,
yeah,
like they would tear up your paper. But it's like, but no, that rule breaking in that film is just like what makes it genius in a sense. Like like his catchphrase, like I said, is like, "I don't know what I want."
that makes sense. That makes sense. He reminds me almost. He reminds me almost of a like. How do I say this? It's kind of like Walter Mitty without the backbone.
Yeah.
Like 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 I'm talking like the movie Walter Mitty, not the short story, but like the
Okay.
movie Walter Mitty without the backbone. It was that without it reminded me a little bit of Walter Mitty without the. It was like if 1984 and Walter Mitty had a love child, except they were much more disinterested emotionally. Um, what was the other thing I was going to talk about? So I was talking about the set building, and I'm trying to think. Like, I also really liked the way that the film dealt with evil, because it was to the point where it was kind of like they made it so much more horrifying by just how easy it was.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a lot more how truly evil thing. We don't have supervillains running around. You don't have
Yeah.
people making bombastic speeches and songs. Life isn't Disney villains. It's the subtle things when evil stops seeming evil. That's how Germany before and during the war happens.
Oh, you could go better that. Look at the Soviet Union. They
Is
had
that the Soviet
a
Union?
good. They had like well, they had good intentions to begin with. Like Soviet Union didn't start with Stalinism. It's had a utopian goal in mind.
It's just me, or just like, does aiming for utopia just seem to bring out the absolute worst in humanity?
Yes, and in fact, in my opinion, it's a bit. Some of the goal, if you look at the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, ultimately what turned out is kind of indistinguishable. But that's a topic for another podcast, even if that.
It was like they went opposite ways around the political spectrum and met back in just like
Literally killed each
the
other.
quagmire of absolute and total misery.
I mean, from like if I was an alien who came to Earth, I would just say that Stalin and Hitler were kings. They have absolute power and they are warlords and that they have control of everything of their nation. I wouldn't care about like the ideology that started their nations or be like they're basically kings.
Aristocracy will never die. Because I think as long as you have people, there will always be somebody struggling with the conception of they're better than me. As long as somebody thinks as long as you think someone's better than you, there's always going to be Like, there's always that guy who's that much richer. There's always that one guy who's that much better.
Freudian slip. You used your goth girl voice. Aristocracy will always be a thing.
Don't remind me. It's been a long weekend. All right, so
Maybe it's not. You know, I will add to that slightly. You know, what was I gonna say? Like, originally in the script there was going to be a big brother figure, but in this there isn't. Did you notice that?
there isn't. There's the time because when the movie starts, there's mustache wheelchairman.
Yeah, Mr. Helpman. With his awesome lazy boy.
Helpman.
Mr. Helpman with his awesome lazy boy wheelchair.
Yeah, right. It's like the inside of a Cadillac from the '60s.
But it's also very plush and British and kind of Victorian in a sense.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's like, yeah, because he starts out the movie in front of that big eyeball.
Oh yeah.
On the television, I'm like, oh, I know where this is going. And I'm like, oh no, I don't. Do you always notice that how whenever there's like an evil empire, why do all the soldiers always have masks?
Because they're faceless.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons why I prefer Titus Groan to Lord of the Rings, because you have Sauron, even though you don't see, I do like how Tolkien didn't like really show him as a person. Like he's a villain, but he's a very un-Disney villain. But like even in Titus Groan, where we have someone like Steerpike, evil is a very uncomplicated matter, and Steerpike is a very well built character. And in Brazil, you don't even have that. You don't have any villain at all. And I don't know if you remember this. Do you remember the samurai fighting scene?
In Brazil.
Yes.
Yes. There were. Yeah, no. There's only one.
Yeah, but it's total over a while of the film.
Yeah, there are a couple because he goes back a couple times.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you remember that like Jonathan Pryce's face was behind the samurai? Like.
Yes, when he is the samurai.
Yes. So people have suggested that the samurai means Sam, you or I, sort of semi.
That's less of a stretch. Yeah, that's not a huge stretch actually.
Yeah, and that's kind of like saying like, you know, Sam is the system. Not only because he's part of society and because he has his own effects just from like the greater aspect of, I don't know, chaos theory, but like it's also part of the Ministry of Information. Like he's fighting. He thinks he's above human nature, but he's not. He's human, and that's why it's part of some of the themes. Like you are the system. You are human. You're not above the people you want to overthrow. And it's funny because, like in the words of J.G. Keeley, all anarchy has just resulted in the establishment of another state.
In what way is that reflected in the movie? Like, because I don't see the movie telling that much. Like, I see the movie sort of go. Or what are you trying to get at? I'm sorry.
Well, it has to do with the fact that Sam is fighting for more or less for a revolution for the side of the Robert De Niro character.
Right, with Robert De Niro, the magical HVAC repairman.
I'll get to that later, but my last question.
I'm not kidding.
Yeah, we'll go on that later. But something tells me you like the escapism aspect of Sam Lowry's character, and maybe if you don't like reflect with Sam Lowry, you probably like that, didn't you?
I did. I get that was part of the Walter Mitty parallel. I thought it's escapism. There's a need for the escapism because you're looking around, everything is a form. You've lost human input in the world, and that's
because everything is technology. Like is overrun that world,
right?
And
it's a very modern concern because they're attempting to create a closed system, and attempting to create a closed system is exactly what we're trying to do now. We have overwhelming surveillance. Everything is online. We have autonomous cars. We're working on, it's the natural human desire to control. Because humans need to control. They don't desire to, they need.
Yeah, I would agree with
need
that.
aspects of control. They need things to command and control and deal with. They and the more you move that away from each other, the more people will need it. These things,
Oh yeah.
technological advances.
We actually almost don't want equality. Like we want to be better ourselves. Like even if it's like personal betterment, like not outside the material world.
Right. Because personal betterment is completely
Well, it's evolutionarily
immeasurable.
viable. It makes it we are evolved to improve.
Theoretically, but personal betterment is not always objective.
Yeah, that's true.
And you're looking at a society that's demanding quantification. It seems like a natural endpoint of our current desire for quantification. There is something refreshing if you look back at older philosophies or theologies that say, you know what, it's okay. It's okay that I don't know, because I can't know.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
It's okay, I will embrace the mystery of not knowing.
But now I think, but that's like more like modernism, which was pre-modernism. Now we're like in this, well, everyone wants to act like we're in postmodern state, and
True,
that's like,
but postmodernism still retains, I think it's modernist, I'm not sure, but I think it's modernist, the desire to say, we can have a God's eye perspective. We can zoom back and look at everything objectively. We just don't know how to do it yet. And
yeah, but also the
I think
postmodern
that's
perspective
completely
would
untrue.
have more. What? Sorry.
That's untrue. You can't, because you are still bound by time and space. As long as you are bound by time and space and the fact that you are not a machine, you're a person. You're more than a machine. You are more than the chemical impulses in your head. You cannot have that view. You cannot become a robot as much as you like to be. And the flaws that are inherent in your person, those are ultimately what sets you apart from every other person, is often what defines you as a person. Now, what you can use that in a negative way, like saying, "Oh, yeah, you're a different race, you're a different gender from us." That's when the concept of us versus them comes in. But also, what makes me different from you is that we are different. We aren't the same person. We have different quirks. We have different things that makes us different. What makes me and what makes me and my girlfriend different? I mean, a lot of things, but after enough years, you do realize that there's a lot of things.
But also, I'd say with postmodernism, like there's more of a focus on perspectives that are relative, that say like that almost reject truth in a way. Like you have the rise of universalism and relativism, and we're kind of straying from the original topic here, but like
We are.
It's important to know that Brazil was made in a late modernist context, I think. But that you're definitely right with that.
Yeah, it's
And also during the late Cold War, which is also significant.
right. The late Cold War, because it's sort of like during the Cold War, it was easy to say. I think for some reason it was the mustache that Robert De Niro had. I'm like thinking like World War II movie. World War II movie.
I guess he's like the only second large American character other than Kim Grice.
Yeah. Because I think like Robert De Niro. I'm thinking like he is dressed like some guy. He's dressed like somebody who's parachuting from an RAF plane into Normandy. He dressed for the occasion, and he's got the mustache for it too. And my thoughts like, this is like I'm thinking, oh yeah, look, plucky British. It's like the plucky British. Bridge over the River Kwai, the plucky British versus the
Alec Guinness character.
yeah. He was Alec Guinness with an over-engineered screwdriver, and that's what I got, and because it was personal determination and outside the box thinking versus overly quantified and overly specialized.
Which is another thing about imagination, it's free. It's the only thing that can't be controlled by that government in the end and can't be technologically regulated. Enhanced maybe, yes, but not trapped. It's the only thing that made Sam free in the end.
Right, because the last words are, "We lost him." The last
Hmm.
words. That's more significant than I thought it was, because the last words in the movie are, "We lost him."
Oh yeah, and Sam singing, but that's not really song, but that's
That
in its way, in its own way.
that's the credits.
Yeah.
Unless it's a Marvel movie, the credits don't count.
Quotes by Andrew.
Yeah, uh, it was an interesting movie. It's sticking with me more than I thought it would.
Good.
Because, like, after the movie, I'm like, that's, like, your favorite movie?
But now you're starting to understand because that's what happened to me too. And I also read a
I
lot
am
of
starting a little bit.
and I think I should put this in the description, but I read this really good movie essay by a place called Deep Focus Reviews that talked about like exploring its themes. I was like, oh, I'm getting it because I just knew from the beginning it had this like unique Tim Burton-y look to it that just even if it had that, I would still think it's a great movie.
Tim Burton's come up quite a bit in these podcasts. Huh.
Yeah.
Neat. All right. So like, what is your opinion of like it's sort of like its place?
Well, I read that like first of all, like actually where Tim Burton just go back a little bit with the other subject, Tim Burton and Terry Gilliam actually get their style from a guy called Federico Fellini, who was an Italian filmmaker of the mid 20th century. He kind of favored like what you said, like large spaces, pre-made sets, ridiculousness, absurdity.
It
Um,
is quite absurd at
Another
times.
movie you might like if you liked the Brazil is called In and a Half. It's about an Italian dude making a movie, which sounds dumb, but is actually really fun and cool. You're just staring at me blankly.
I am. I'm sorry. I was trying to follow. I'm like, I know the name Federico Fellini, and I'm like, where do I know it from? And then that made me jump to the fact that anybody who's trying to figure out why it's called Brazil, don't bother.
I heard it was more of a copyright thing because 1984 came out in 1984, and they really originally going to call it 1984 and a half, referencing 1984 the book and a half the Federico Fellini novel movie.
That would actually make more sense than the name Brazil, because it has nothing to do with Brazil
Except for the song.
except for the song Brazil.
So that's the first thing that came in mind with the art direction. The second thing is that it was kind of see Terry Gilliam. I think he's a bit of a genius because he knew that the film would be old one day, and he thought since this takes place somewhere in the 20th century, quote unquote,
Mm-hmm.
um, he wanted to like invoke like sort of a retro futuristic. It's kind of like diesel punk. This like not late 1930s kind of look to it.
Yeah, it's
I think it worked because there's except for the technology, could you really tell it was made in 1984?
no, it's like Frank Lloyd Wright was the director of Mad Max.
Oh yeah.
That's what that's kind of yeah. It was everything is a mini Chrysler building.
Yeah, that's true. It's Art Deco everywhere.
Everything is the Chrysler building.
But yeah, like even though I think the art direction is great, I like it for, again, because, Keeley got me hung up on all this, but the philosophy and psychology aspect that it explores. I think I see just from everything I read and everything I've seen, I see Brazil as a societal criticism of 20th century humanity in general. Like there's the consumerism aspect that's throughout the movie, also the criticism of totalitarianism, but also in particular how technology makes us so interconnected and makes things so convenient. We become very lazy, and our laziness accidentally affects others. So you think like the scene in the beginning of the movie where the guy is accidentally killed, Buttle or Tuttle, whoever his name is, because like a fly, literally because of butterfly effect, or
Yeah,
if you will, a fly effect.
it was literally a butterfly effect.
Yeah, a very ugly butterfly. But
Uh,
in other words, because of technology, really, because of that, like technology makes us more lazy and makes things more connected. So mistakes can happen more and accidental. Because when Terry Gilliam was asked, "Is this a movie about the future?" He said, "No, it's a movie about the present. How things like bureaucracy, totalitarian governments create accidents because of their
yes.
interconnectedness." and then they can create a sort of dehumanized world. Like again, like another aspect I think of the movie is individualism, which is like Sam really it can't be a fully realized individual in such a totalitarian world.
Right, because you're getting into the fact where the only thing that's self-sustaining is the power authority. Excuse me, the power structure itself is entirely self-sustaining.
Oh yeah, and
It doesn't need you, but you need it desperately.
yeah, it essentially relies on human laziness in order to work, and that's always going to be a thing. So it
Not
always
even
exists.
laziness, complacency.
Oh, that too. I agree.
There we go. I'm sorry about that. We broke up for a second there.
I mean, like, oh, okay. Well, if you think about like Sam is a hollow man, you know, he has like no desires or dreams, but he only has Jill Layden, the Kim Grice character, and like his job, which is low end, and he only takes a promotion because of Kim Grice, not because of his mother. And his mother is kind of like haggling at him, like he wants to be an individual, but he's too like gun shy to do so because of like kind of like a person who's been raised in a strict household who doesn't know what to do with themselves. Like he's that sort of person, but in a much larger context. So also I think it kind of deals with more of a fatalistic picture, like in general, because Gilliam, I mean, like sort of like, oh, like that's all it takes for something catastrophically wrong. And even though it's taken in a sort of humorous context, I think it's like kind of funny because like that's what starts the whole thing in to begin with.
Yeah.
And I think this has to go with why Sam is the same system he fights, because in that world, and really in all worlds, everything is so connected. He essentially is the same person he fights, because even though he sides with the Robert De Niro HVAC superhero guy to fight the system, the terrorists to create a new system.
He is the system.
Yeah, he is the system, and not just because he works for the Ministry of Information, because he's a human being. Because if he thinks that suddenly creating a new system of government will suddenly change everything, even if it would improve something, he's still human and he's still moved by the same desires. Like I know if you like trying to get like getting a little political, but some of these SJWs, you hear them talk on like Tumblr and something, they talk like they're like gods, like they're like impervious to the prejudices that make us human and really do make our world a crap sack.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that.
Some of them.
I wouldn't specifically say that, but I would say there's nobody who is unbiased. No,
yeah, but there's no one that is good. No, not one. It really is how I would.
True. No. I concur because everybody. Because I know this sounds very trite, but it is. Nobody is perfect, and you always have to take that into account whenever you're measuring anything. Because nobody's perfect. Even people say, "What about like the scientific method and imperial data?" Still, that imperial data is collected inside an environment that expects a certain result.
Yeah, like
it's only valid. It's only valid until enough results come back against it. So it's inside the strictly physical world. Inside the strictly physical world, it is very. Assuming we're not going to go out and into metaphysics or emotion, but in a strictly materialist world, even strictly viewing the world as material, there is no hope. There is no freedom. You are the sum total of your parts. Congratulations.
Well, even then, like evolution, like made us a certain way to fit with their environment. Like, if I were to say get rid of all treachery tomorrow, and I could do that through bioengineering, that would be bad because treachery is sometimes good for our survival.
Well,
think about like
treachery was. Well, it's like
It's how like you hunt. Like, what if you had to trap like a tiger, not a tiger, but like a prey? You had to like essentially deceive it. Like
the most dangerous game.
Yeah, even if
you say the most dangerous game.
But even if you say that we're ready to get rid of treachery tomorrow, I don't think we are, because we still live in a wild world. Like even if really it's an anti-posthumanist movie. It's a movie about human nature as much as it is about how we think as humans. Like we can never really have utopia. Human nature is fatalistic. I don't know if you concur on that, but that's what I see in it, ultimately.
I think materialism is fatalistic.
Well, yeah,
I
it does
think I
seem
think
to
what
point more to
ultimately
materialism.
the existence of things that are inexplicable, that exist outside of the materially proven world, the existence of the supernatural, which is if you I think if I think it's very foolhardy if you discount the supernatural as a concept, because you don't know and you can't know, and by saying you do know that it doesn't exist, you're saying you're saying a lot more things that don't make sense than things that do make sense.
But I think what you're also getting at is there's no salvation for man in man. We can't
No, of
save
course not.
ourselves.
You cannot be you can't live forever by being the perfect person, because you could be the to use the Aristotelian logic, is you can be the manniest man, not the manliest, the manniest, the most man of men. You could be the most women of woman. No, the other way around. Woman of women.
And even then, you
Woman
could
of women.
break your definition because you're still a man.
Right? Yeah. Right, because you're like you can be the best person you can be, but you can't be the best me I can be. And the only
Oh yeah,
way
true. There's also individualism. You would have to
the
like if you look at these utopian societies, one of the first things they do is they try to destroy individualism. Look at North Korea; like they're a very collectivist society.
and collective cultural collectivism is not necessarily always a terrible idea,
And
because
nor is it necessarily associated with totalitarianism. Hong Kong is a extremely free nation, yet it's quite collectivist, from what I understand.
societally,
From what I understand, yeah.
I'm I mean from my
More like a aspect on family, from what I understand, but just as a extension of Chinese society with just British manners. I don't know.
from my limited uh, knowledge, because this did come up for a project a little while ago, but yeah, certain cultures do tend to be a lot more collectivists, because basically cultures can be monetarily collectivist, they can be societally collectivist, they can be both or neither. I think America, we tend to be societally non-collectivist, and
Extremely.
we cover in the middle on money.
Oh yeah.
But I would say that in general, at least from what I know, and this is not an absolute statement, because I'm not an expert when it comes to this, but based on the research that I did for one thing, um, trying to think of it, that actually might have been in high school, but East Asian cultures do tend to be more societally collectivist versus and less financially collectivist. I mean that was the impression I got, but I mean I would I could be very wrong, but that's at least the research that I got when I had to do it for one project a while ago. Yeah, that's
Okay.
about all I have to say about, because it is hard to have a
A utopia with individuals, is what
right,
we are
because
saying.
you can't have utopia, because somebody's always going to want something they don't have.
And everyone's going to define happiness differently is another thing.
True,
And a
like,
utopia is by definition where everyone is happy.
but
You
a
know?
utopia is a closed system, and happiness
Oh
is
yeah, true.
fleeting.
That's true.
Because a closed system will never be able to achieve what an open system can, even though it's almost like what happens when you have a socialist, or you opt into a more socialistic economy, which is your highs will never be as high as a free system, but your lows will never be like.
Yeah.
But the thing about that is, like any closed system, when it falls apart, it goes to hell in a handbasket.
Oh yeah.
It's Jurassic Park.
You could almost
It's a
like
semi-closed. That was a system that wanted to be closed but couldn't
in
be.
that way, it's almost like North Korea is not a failure of communism; it's an ultimate victory. People like it's one of the last surviving communist nations, and there's no stopping it. It like they succeeded in equality and collectivism in a certain sense. I
But
know.
I feel like a
I mean,
lot
just
of
for people who
political
don't want to get
scholars would
mad, just
disagree about that, though.
yeah, well,
Like,
yeah, a preference like they're definitely not orthodox either to what they extended to be in the 40s or what Marxism even tries to aim for. But I think that they earn a certain equality. So
I
anyone who wants to
wonder
scream into the emails, they shouldn't, because I take that with a grain of salt. I mean, in a certain interpretation of it.
what I'm wondering about is if the fact I'm wondering the fact that we've never really seen true communism is the fact that Marx's vision is just too unrealistic.
Or just too vague, because if you look
It's
at it, like, do you think so? Like, it's just maybe a little bit too vague? Because I heard he wrote mostly philosophy, not so much economic stuff.
well, I mean, the only way you'd ever achieve like here, at least to my mind, the only way that you would get to communism is through philosophy because through
Yeah.
economic theory it makes no sense. It only makes sense through philosophy.
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe you think it's worth fighting for, but how can you necessarily dig up that ought from the is of human nature? Like, why is it better for people to be 100% equal or whatever, or, well, I guess have the means of production in the hands of the people? Why is that necessarily bad? What's so bad about there being people who are richer than you? They just, I
I
feel like I'm
mean,
gonna get a lot of hate mail
to
from this.
me, I mean, at least to me personally, I don't mind that there are people who have more than I do.
Yeah, I mean, but these same thing is like
But
there are some people who like I think if you could clone them, like they could live in a communist society together. Like the only people who want to be that's why when you try to force it on people through a government, that's why it collapses. But at the same time, if you had a commune where everyone agreed with it, once you all died and your kids were only left, would they necessarily want the commune to keep on going? Because they're totally different. You just gave birth to totally different people. You know what I'm saying here?
again, that goes back to the individualist versus a model.
Exactly. So
So
that's why
so
I sort of see
is
where North Korea kind of did better with the whole collectivist thing. They kind of like made communism survive more for a longer generation.
so
By
therefore couldn't you ultimately I don't know if this is too huge a loop, but couldn't you make that the self-sustenance of a society is ultimately sort of because there's a reason why you could never have a totalitarian society and religion coexist because religion is generally um at least I'm thinking from what I know because I'm going to use a more Christian language but
sure.
it is similar in because you know that I've studied I've studied a decent amount of Arabic, well, Arabic and Arab culture in college. It is an interest of mine. I taken a lot of courses on it. Not a lot. When I say a lot, I mean like 5.
I know, but that
Uh,
to me is that would be a lot for me because
it's
I've taken 0.
yeah, it's very it's very interesting to see, especially how I'm thinking in Israel when you see the difference between Christian family, a Jewish family, and a Muslim family. But there still is, I think, in most of those monotheistic religions, there is the concept of the dying to oneself.
Oh yeah.
It's the dying of oneself to a higher authority. But when the government becomes that higher authority, but see the thing is, nowhere, at least that I know of, in at least Christian tech, I cannot speak to the Quran because I have read the Quran, but it has been 2 years since I read it. Even then, I'm not sure it's the whole thing. I think it was most of it. I think it was the whole thing. It just wasn't in order. But no, it was in order. But the thing about it is that you're not trying to destroy who you are. You're trying to destroy what you are. You're trying to take away your human failings to transcend to a higher authority, a higher state of being, Whereas if the government becomes the authority to which you are dying untoward, you are giving up who you are, not what you are, because you don't have to make a transcendental leap. It's merely a materialistic crossing. And this is why purely materialistic.
You side with us. You side with us.
Right, because a purely materialistic worldview will never adequately explain love. It will never.
I won't get that from that, but
will never. Well, it's related because it will never explain sacrifice. It will never explain, like, you can, as much as you can say, yeah.
By the way, we're running out of time.
Okay, I'm sorry. Chemical reactions in the brain, but there's so much more than that. It is so much more than that. It doesn't make sense that it can just be that.
Okay, I don't know how I got that from that, but I still sort of know what you're saying. Anyway, in conclusion, I just like this movie because it's just so darn fun in the end. Because, like...
It's fun in a really depressing sort of way.
Yeah, but it's also a comedy. Like, I see that... I'm not really a fan of... I don't really know Monty Python, but I think it's... Even though it's a dark comedy, I think it's fun, and it's, like... It's a very nice, artsy movie. Like, I've heard it said, like... It's all these genres at once. It's a romance because Kim Grice is, like, sort of... Because, Jonathan Pryce is pursuing Jim Greased. It's a war movie because, of the terrorist aspect versus the government. It's a mystery because Jonathan Pryce is trying to discover something. It's a comedy.
It's a really bad romance novel because of the bird guy.
Oh gosh. And you know what? Maybe this is a little bit from left field, but because we're talking about gothic fiction, it kind of reminds me of a goth-y kind of movie. And I know that people think of, like, the subculture, probably our listeners, when we think of it. No, but, like,
you mean gothic as in the literary genre gothic?
Well, it's artsy. It's about individualism. It's very philosophical. It's downbeat. Like, I don't think, like, maybe you could get some goth kids to watch it, and they
Dramatic,
could, like,
over-the-top scenery.
Yeah, like I said, artsy.
Mystery. Paranoia, building paranoia.
It's a depressing movie in general, but it's also philosophical. I mean, I hate to stereotype it. I just noticed about goths, it's like they seem to sort of be into philosophy. I'm sorry if I'm offending you or anyone, but
you're speaking from your experience of two.
Yes, I am completely my experience, not my knowledge.
Your experience of two.
You could say that.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry to disappoint you if I'm.
It just came across as a gothy kind of movie that you would like, or maybe not so much falling to gothic fiction, but the kind that a gothy kind of person would like.
I'm still surprised I've never painted my nails black. Where are we going with this?
It's a great movie.
I agree with you. It is a good movie, and I do agree there are gothic elements. The storytelling, the dream sequence, the importance of, like, the dreams and dream sequences.
Oh yeah.
Because those matter. Because in gothic.
And Tim Burton stole from the aesthetic we said with Batman and his other movies. So that's...
To me, it looks like the music video from Over the Hills and Far Away.
Yes. I know. I watched that, so
you know exactly what I'm talking about. Gary Moore, Over the Hills and Far Away.
I think that came out in 2001 too, so it probably was inspired by it.
No, the song was older than that.
No, the music. I mean, the music video.
I'm pretty sure it's older than that. I think the Nightwish cover of it might have come out in 2001.
Oh, never mind.
Because Tarja Turunen was still the lead singer, but
never mind.
Anyway, so do you have any questions for me?
You mean Q&A time?
Yes.
Well, on that note, speaking of, okay, do you have some for me?
I have one for you that I know of.
Well, I'll get started. I have two, as is per usual. Oh,
okay, sure.
Do you think that fantasy is just a personal fad for you? Like, your interest in fantasy in general, I guess.
Can you define fad?
Like, in 10 years, you won't care about fantasy. You'll care about it just as much as you like Scooby-Doo. It just will be a thing of the past you just don't care about.
I doubt it.
Really?
I doubt it. It's I've been too much invested in it for too much of my life.
Interesting.
It's like one of those, like my interest in it has peaks and valleys, but it never goes away. It's sort of like my interest in cars. I've always been interested in cars. It's had peaks and valleys, but it's something I don't ever see myself not being interested or not caring about.
That's fair. I mean, I just remember I don't quite remember you being as interested as you were, which makes me a little bit skeptical, but I believe you.
Hmm.
I mean, like Michael Moorcock, which I need to read. He's been actually writing fiction, or at least editing fiction, since 1956. Okay, 62 years. Carcel had fids on them when he was writing fiction. Like, can you imagine being a published author for 62 plus years, for 60 plus years?
Can I imagine?
Like, he's a peer of Tolkien's, technically speaking,
Yeah,
because I
no,
think
he,
Return
yeah.
of the King came out in 1956, and he was editing Tarzan anthologies that year. So, still.
Tech, 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 technically, yeah, a
A late and an
contemporary
early, but
thereof.
still technically contemporary.
Yeah, it would be a contemporary. All right, so I got in real life. In real life, what fantasy class are you? We seem to have fantasy bent tonight. I don't know why.
Uh, Actually, in my opinion, less so, but just because we did a movie.
True.
Gosh, what are we gonna do for Fantasy Month? Because we're already sort of a fancy podcast.
We are. Oh dear.
Never thought
Oh,
of that, did you?
we'll talk about that later.
Anyway, to answer your question, I think an archer. I don't know about race, but just because I'm really good at it in real life, I'm actually.
Yeah, no, you are actually good at archery in real life.
I have a club that
I forgot
a
that.
group of friends that's kind of like more into like shooting, but I don't. First of all, I don't have a rifle, but if I did have any sort of projectile weapon, it'd be a bow and arrow set.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. What's I forgot that you did archery.
I did it for 3 years in 4-H.
What was your second question?
Oh, uh, what don't you like about superhero fiction, and what would make you be interested in it?
Oh, what don't I like about superhero fiction? A lot.
Okay.
If I can just sum it up, the unkillableness of the main characters.
Oh yeah, yeah. But that doesn't have to be a given. But it's reoccurring, and it seems there's too many plot easy way outs. I
Yeah,
guess that way,
they're not. Yeah, like the main characters, they're both too tough and too fragile.
which is weird.
Yeah,
You think?
they
Hmm,
rarely seem to learn from their mistakes.
that's a good point.
The world surrounding them doesn't make sense. It's like the modern world. It's like I'm like when I actually last night my mom was watching Captain America when I walked into the room and I'm like I sit there for a while. I was just thinking about the world of Captain. It doesn't make any sense. Like I mean, like I know I kind of
Like distractingly so, because I thought I was the
yeah.
guy who cared about
Well,
realism.
right. It's like you're one to talk. You're a fantasy writer. It's like, but fantasy has to at least be consistent. It has to at least make sense.
Yeah,
Like the Lord of the
Harrison
Rings.
worlds like that.
Yeah, like the Lord of the Rings makes sense in Middle Earth. It doesn't make sense if you said it in modern day Brooklyn.
No.
To be superhero. A lot of superhero movies are like if you rewrote like the Irish legend the Tane, like if you rewrote the Tane Cooley and set it in like Sioux City, Iowa. It it just it's to me it's a branch of heroic fantasy that it just does not interest me because sometimes people will say yeah it does have a lot of the good versus evil themes which all ultimately all true fiction ends up dealing with is good versus evil. Essentially almost everything will come down to good versus evil, even though I don't think that's necessarily a given. I think you can have a main conflict that isn't good versus evil.
I don't see it that way, but I know what you're saying. But I would disagree. But I'm not going to get into that.
But I would disagree as well because there are other conflicts that you can choose. Because a lot of people go, oh, you can see this, and you have the struggle of great power, and I'm like, yeah, there is some of the struggle of great power, but again, it's how the characters deal with it. And after a while, especially with how many we've seen, after a while, it just starts to feel like you're watching the same movie. There's this like
Yeah.
there's there's little variety, and I know there are people who are into it. I don't want to knock that they're into it, and I don't want people to say like, "Oh, you don't like comic." I don't dislike
Do you at
comic
least find it
books.
entertaining? I mean, like, I don't know.
It can be.
Oh,
It certainly can be. It's just it's not my cup of tea because it's not the kind of fantasy I'm interested in. I'm much more interested in. And it doesn't mean there aren't aspects of it that I appreciate. I
oh
think
yeah.
are done really well, especially in the last couple of years, because we've really seen people pouring time and money into making these stories. These are ultimately stories for the people.
Oh yeah, mass entertainment.
Yeah, trying to elevate it. So that's, and I have no problem with that because I think that gives higher meaning to the greater amount of people, and people find a lot of meaning in it. So that's special. So yeah,
So
no,
one last question. Well, this
yes,
happens to be a question.
yes.
So have you watched? It sounds like you have. This isn't the question, by the way. Um, it sounds like just for superhero fiction to be good, it has to be good. It just has to be good for you, and it can't fall into the trope traps that it usually does as a genre.
Yes, because it's like anime.
Yeah, there's some good
Half,
anime, but
ha,
most of them isn't good.
yeah, it's like, and I love the visual style, but half the time, 3 episodes in, you know how the series ends.
Or nothing happens like Dragon Ball.
Or even though I love the Pokemon, it always starts over where it left. It always starts over. It's always
Essentially,
starting
yeah,
over, and it's like, yeah, because I feel like that with a lot of superhero movies, within the first 5-10 minutes, you know exactly how it's going to end.
more or
Because
less.
there's
Yeah.
going to be that climactic battle. There's going to be when the hero goes down, then drags himself back up. You know why? Because it ultimately makes us feel good, and it should make us feel good. There's nothing wrong with it making us feel good, and so there's nothing wrong with having that heroic ending. It just needs to be. I'm looking for one that tickles my soul. The one that comes the closest is the original Spider-Man
Hmm.
with Tobey Maguire. That
Okay.
to me that is the superhero movie,
Okay.
because that is the one that took it away from the crazy bombastics of the comics, which are fun. Like the old Batmans are a lot of fun,
Oh yeah.
but it put it in the real world, and it made it feel like the real world.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And I'm even like with the Marvel ones, it's like the real world shouldn't be functioning the way it is.
Yeah.
But in Spider-Man, that's in the original Spider-Man, that's not a problem, because there's not this crazy whole universe of everything going on. There are no alien mothership black hole portals over Manhattan. There's a scared young boy trying to fulfill his dead uncle's wish.
So here's my last question. Have you read Watchmen by Alan Moore?
No, but I know of it. I know
Okay,
I
well
know I know a lot of people consider
that's
it.
my assigned reading. Read Watchmen and tell me what you think.
A lot of people have praised that as being the best of the superhero stuff.
Also a niche 80s thing from 1985.
Mm. Okay, so Matthew, I did think up one more question. Like, tell me in one sentence, why is Terry Gilliam so cool? Because you like him a ton.
Because he's funny and deep at the same time, and he successfully merges entertainment and art.
Excellent. All right, so I think it's gonna be a wrap for us.
Yeah.
I know we wondered like we always do. We're gonna try and work on this in the future and try and make some technical improvements soon. But I think that's gonna be it for tonight. We love you guys. Have a great night, internet. Okay, bye now.